The calm of the Caribbean Sea was deceiving that day. The Odyssey glided through the shimmering waters, its sleek hull cutting through the waves with barely a sound. On board, Dr. Mara Graves, a seasoned oceanographer, stood at the helm, eyes scanning the vast expanse of blue. Her heart raced despite the serenity around her. The Bermuda Triangle, a place of legends, rumors, and unexplained disappearances, loomed ahead. The crew, equally tense, moved about, their every glance drawn toward the massive map on the wall that pinpointed their destination. Dr. Mara's lips were tight as she studied the readings on her radar. The air was thick with something unseen. "Something doesn't feel right," she muttered under her breath. As if on cue, the radar emitted a faint beep, an anomaly that caught everyone's attention. The beep turned into a rhythmic pulse. It was growing stronger. Mara's hands clenched the ship's wheel as she leaned forward. "We need to find out what's causing this," she said to the crew, her voice steady despite the unease coursing through her. The pulse on the radar grew stronger, vibrating through the ship, creating an eerie hum that reverberated through the hull. Dr. Mara leaned in, her breath catching as the readings flickered, showing a rapid shift in the blip's location. It was moving toward them, fast. The team gathered around the radar screen, their faces illuminated by the flickering light. Thomas, the ship's engineer, stepped forward, his brow furrowed. This isn't right," he said, his voice laced with confusion. "It's not natural." The hum grew louder, sending chills through the crew. The ship's communication system suddenly came to life with a garbled transmission. The voice, distorted and urgent, sent an icy shiver down their spines. "You shouldn't have come." The words lingered in the air, leaving an unsettling silence behind them. Mara's pulse quickened as she exchanged a look with Thomas. "We have to dive," she said, her voice resolute. The crew members hesitated but followed her lead, knowing the stakes were higher than they ever imagined. The team scrambled to prepare the submersible, an advanced underwater vehicle designed to explore the deepest reaches of the ocean. As the sub lowered into the water, the reality of their mission set in. The ocean seemed infinite, stretching out before them in every direction, as though they were descending into the very depths of the unknown. The hum of the submersible's engines filled the cabin, but outside, there was nothing but dark, endless water. Dr. Mara gripped the controls tightly, her mind racing. They were no longer just explorers. They were stepping into a place that had claimed ships, planes, and lives for centuries. The Bermuda Triangle, with its dark history, was not just a mystery, it was a warning. As the submersible descended into the depths, strange shadows began to flicker on the edge of their lights. Thomas sat across from her, his face pale. "Something's wrong. This place isn't normal," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Mara's grip tightened on the wheel. She didn't respond. There was no need. The silent darkness around them spoke volumes. The deeper they went, the more unnatural the waters seemed. The sonar remained silent, the surrounding darkness swallowing their signals. The crew's unease mounted as the submersible's lights illuminated strange, unidentifiable shapes moving just beyond their view. Then, as the submersible drifted past what appeared to be a cluster of rocks, the outline of a massive, ancient structure came into view. Half submerged, the weathered remains of what seemed like a shipwreck or a forgotten city rose from the seabed. It was a sight that shouldn't have existed, an anomaly, hidden for centuries beneath the waves. "Hold steady," Mara instructed, her voice steady, though her heart raced. She activated the scanner, hoping to gain some insight into what lay ahead. The scanner's results returned strange readings, confirming her fears. The wreck wasn't from any known period. It was far older than anything recorded in history. Thomas, staring through the porthole, whispered, "What is that thing?" Mara didn't respond. She was already calculating their next move. Back aboard the Odyssey, the crew gathered around the artifacts they had recovered. Among the debris from the wreckage was an ancient map, its edges frayed and markings unfamiliar. It didn't make sense. The map, though incomplete, seemed to depict a location deep within the Bermuda Triangle, the very place they had been. A journal was found alongside it, written in an old, faded script. The final entry was a warning. "The triangle calls to you. Escape while you can." The air around Dr. Mara grew heavy as she read the words aloud. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. The map was real, and the journal, who had left it there? And why? Thomas stood up, his hands shaking. "This doesn't make any sense." Dr. Mara closed the journal and set it aside. "It's a message, one we can't ignore." She paused, her mind racing. "We're only getting started." The crew fell silent, the weight of their mission now fully realized. They had uncovered something that should have stayed hidden. But there was no turning back now. The map lay across the table in the ship's lab, its faded edges curling with age. Dr. Mara leaned over it, her brow furrowed in concentration. The coordinates it showed pointed to a location deep within the Bermuda Triangle, a place no one had ever ventured. The crew stood around her, silent, the weight of their discovery hanging heavily in the air. Thomas, the ship's engineer, paced nervously. "This doesn't make sense," he muttered, his eyes scanning the map once again. "The map's pointing to the deepest part of the triangle. No ship or plane has ever made it back from there." Mara nodded, tracing her fingers over the markings. "I know," she said softly. "But whatever is there, it's important. And we need to find out why it's been hidden for so long." She turned to face the crew. "We're going to dive again. We don't have a choice." The tension on the ship was palpable. No one spoke, but everyone understood. This was the moment they had been dreading. They were diving deeper into the heart of the mystery. As the Odyssey cut through the waters, heading back toward the coordinates marked on the map, the mood on board was heavier than ever. The ocean stretched endlessly in every direction, its vastness a constant reminder of the danger they were about to face. The crew moved in tense silence, each one lost in their own thoughts. The ship's instruments remained eerily quiet, the steady hum of the engines, the only sound breaking the stillness. Thomas, now at the radar station, looked up sharply as the ship's compass started spinning wildly. "This isn't right," he muttered. "The instruments are malfunctioning." Dr. Mara stepped up behind him, her face pale. "What does that mean?" "It means," Thomas said slowly, his voice full of dread, "we've entered a part of the triangle where the laws of nature don't apply." The crew exchanged fearful glances. The deep Bermuda Triangle was known for its mysterious disturbances, but this was different. They were about to experience something even more inexplicable. As they continued toward the coordinates, the crew's unease grew. The temperature in the cabin seemed to drop, and the air felt thick with tension. The sonar remained silent, not a single blip to indicate life below. The deeper they ventured, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. Outside the submersible's porthole, strange shapes seemed to shift just beyond the range of the lights, and the silence was deafening. Thomas looked over at Dr. Mara, his voice barely audible. "There's nothing down here. It's like the ocean has swallowed everything." Dr. Mara nodded, staring out into the abyss. "I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing." Suddenly, the sonar screen flickered. A massive object appeared on the display, moving quickly in their direction. "What is that?" Thomas asked, panic creeping into his voice. Before Dr. Mara could answer, the lights on the submersible flickered and went out. The deep darkness that surrounded them was now complete. A sudden, unnerving silence filled the submersible. Dr. Mara could feel her heart pounding in her chest as she scrambled to restart the power. The eerie blackness outside the porthole felt like it was pressing in on them, as if the ocean itself were alive, suffocating them in its depths. Then, without warning, the sonar came back to life, but it was too late. The massive shape was upon them. It passed by the submersible in a blur of shadow and movement, something so large that it seemed to block out the very light around them. "Do you see that?" Thomas whispered. Dr. Mara's voice was tight as she replied, "I see it." The object moved silently, effortlessly, as if it had no need for propulsion. Whatever it was not a part of this world. The crew watched in stunned silence as the shape vanished into the inky depths, leaving only a lingering sense of dread in its wake. The submersible systems came back online, but the crew was shaken. Dr. Mara was the first to regain her composure. She glanced at the sonar, which now showed no trace of the massive shape. "Did anyone else see that?" Thomas asked, his voice shaky. Dr. Mara turned to face him. "Yes, and I don't know what it was." She slowly began to navigate the submersible back toward the surface. The weight of what they had just witnessed was unbearable. It was one thing to read about strange phenomena in the Bermuda Triangle, but it was something entirely different to experience it firsthand. "We're done here," Dr. Mara said, her voice firm, but with a hint of fear creeping in. "We need to get back to the surface and analyze everything." The crew nodded in agreement, their faces pale as they tried to make sense of the unfathomable. The Odyssey broke through the surface of the water, the submersible floating in its wake. The crew, shaken by the event they had just witnessed, gathered in the ship's lab to analyze the data. Dr. Mara sat at the central workstation, flipping through the scans and footage of their dive. The deep ocean was no longer just a place of mystery. It was a place of danger. The strange shape they had seen was not like anything on record. Whatever it wasn't natural. Thomas stood beside her, his brow furrowed. "We need to understand what we're dealing with here. That thing, whatever it was, couldn't have been just a freak occurrence." Dr. Mara nodded. "I agree. But there's something else. That object, it felt deliberate. It was watching us." She paused, the weight of her words settling over the crew. They were no longer just explorers. They were now prey, and the Bermuda Triangle had set its sights on them. Later that night, as the crew gathered in the mess hall, the atmosphere remained tense. Everyone was aware that something far more dangerous than they had anticipated lurked beneath them. The ship rocked gently as the wind howled outside, the moonlight casting an eerie glow over the ocean. "I don't understand," Thomas said, breaking the silence. "How could something that big just disappear without a trace?" Dr. Mara looked out of the window, her eyes distant. "It didn't disappear. It went deeper. Far deeper than we could follow." Thomas shifted uneasily. "And that's the part I don't like. If it's down there, it's watching us. And it's waiting." The crew fell silent, the weight of their situation settling in. They were trapped in a place where even the ocean seemed to fight against them. There was no way out but forward, and that terrifying truth gnawed at them all. The next morning, the Odyssey continued its journey deeper into the Bermuda Triangle. The weather had taken a sudden turn, the sky now overcast, dark clouds looming ominously overhead. The crew worked in near silence, each person wrapped in their own thoughts. Dr. Mara was at the helm, her eyes fixed on the horizon. The map from the wreck still lay on the table in the lab, its coordinates pointing to a location so far down that it seemed almost impossible to reach. Yet, they had no choice but to keep going. "We have to know what's down there," she said quietly, almost to herself. "We can't turn back now." Thomas stepped up beside her, his face grim. "And what if we're not ready for what's down there?" Dr. Mara met his gaze, her resolve unshaken. "Then we deal with it. We have to." The crew exchanged uneasy glances as the ship pushed forward into the stormy unknown. Hours later, as the ship neared the coordinates, the air had grown unnervingly still. The storm had passed, leaving an oppressive silence in its wake. The ocean, once wild and unpredictable, now lay in perfect stillness. Dr. Mara stood at the helm, her hand on the wheel, her heart racing. "There's something wrong," Thomas said, walking up beside her. "The water, it's too calm." She nodded, her eyes scanning the horizon. There was an unnatural stillness in the air, a tension that couldn't be ignored. "This is where the map leads us," Dr. Mara said, her voice tight. "This is the heart of the Bermuda Triangle." The crew gathered around, each of them feeling the weight of the moment. They had come this far, but there was no going back. They had reached the point of no return. "What do we do now?" Thomas asked. Dr. Mara took a deep breath, her gaze unwavering. "We dive." As the submersible descended once more, the deeper they went, the more oppressive the darkness became. The water, once clear and bright, now seemed to swallow their lights, rendering everything beyond their view a mystery. The pressure of the deep was felt in every inch of their bones. Dr. Mara stared ahead, her focus unwavering. "We're getting closer," she muttered, half to herself. The sonar remained silent as it had the last time. It was as if the ocean was holding its breath, waiting for something. Suddenly, a faint blip appeared on the sonar, almost imperceptible. Thomas leaned forward. "What is that?" Dr. Mara's hand hovered over the controls, her heart racing. "We're not alone." A low mechanical hum filled the submersible, sending a chill down the crew's spines. The lights flickered once more, casting unsettling shadows on the walls. Something was down here, something that did not want them to find it. The submersible's lights flickered as they descended deeper into the abyss. The water around them was dense, almost suffocating, as if the ocean itself was pushing back against their presence. Dr. Mara kept her eyes fixed on the sonar, her heart racing. The blip they had seen earlier had grown larger, and it was now closing in. "We're not alone," she said, her voice strained, almost a whisper. Thomas glanced at the screen, his face pale. "That's impossible. We should be alone down here. There's nothing that should be able to move at this depth." Dr. Mara's pulse quickened. "Whatever it is, it's moving toward us, and it's big." As the submersible's lights illuminated the ocean floor, the crew gasped. There, just below them, was the outline of a massive structure. Not a shipwreck, not a city, but something far stranger. Something that should exist. "Hold on," Dr. Mara muttered. "This is it." She adjusted the controls and began to guide the submersible closer to the mysterious structure, her mind racing with questions. What had they uncovered? As the submersible drew closer to the structure, the shape became clearer, and the crew's collective breath caught in their throats. It was enormous, an alien-like ruin, unlike anything they had ever seen before. The walls of the structure were covered in strange, glowing symbols, pulsating with an eerie light. It wasn't just an ancient relic, it was alive. This can't be real," Thomas whispered, his voice thick with disbelief. "Where are we? What is this?" Dr. Mara's hand trembled as she adjusted the controls to get a closer look. The structure was not a natural formation. The angles were too precise, the lines too sharp. It was crafted by something or someone. But who? And for what purpose? The closer they got, the more the air inside the submersible seemed to thrum with energy. They were on the edge of a discovery that could change everything. "Everyone, brace yourselves," Dr. Mara said, her voice determined. "We're going inside." The submersible's hatch opened with a heavy creak, and the crew stepped out onto the structure's surface. The air was thick with a strange palpable energy, and every step they took seemed to reverberate through the ground. The walls of the structure were smooth, almost metallic, and the glowing symbols seemed to pulse in time with their own heartbeats. "This place, it's a temple," Dr. Mara murmured, her voice awed. "But not of any civilization we know. It's alien." The crew began to explore the surface, their footsteps cautious, the weight of the discovery sinking in. Thomas knelt to examine one of the symbols, his fingers brushing over it. The moment his hand touched the glowing design, the air around them hummed with energy. "Get away from it," Dr. Mara shouted, but it was too late. A low, rumbling noise echoed through the structure, followed by the sharp, unnerving sound of metal grinding against stone. The walls around them began to shift. The ground beneath them trembled as the structure seemed to come alive. The walls shifted, revealing hidden chambers and dark passageways. A low rumbling hum echoed through the chamber, followed by a voice, a distorted mechanical voice that seemed to vibrate the very air around them. "Intruders, trespassers." The voice was cold, metallic, and terrifying. It wasn't human. It wasn't anything they had ever encountered. Dr. Mara froze, her breath caught in her throat. Who are you?" she demanded, her voice shaky yet strong. The voice responded with a chilling laugh, one that seemed to echo throughout the structure. "We are the keepers of the forgotten world, And you will never leave. The walls trembled once again, and the crew looked around, horrified. Something was happening, something they could neither understand nor control. "We need to leave now," Thomas said, panic creeping into his voice. The crew scrambled to return to the submersible, but the structure seemed to fight them at every turn. The walls shifted, blocking their path, and the air grew thick with a suffocating energy. Panic set in as they realized that the structure was not just alive, it was a trap. Thomas shoved Dr. Mara toward the exit, his voice frantic. "We have to get out of here, now." But the submersible was no longer where they had left it. It had disappeared into the shifting shadows of the structure. "We can't escape," Dr. Mara said, her voice trembling. "We're stuck here." The crew turned, their eyes filled with terror as the rumbling intensified, the voice growing louder and more menacing. "You should not have come." In the distance, something moved. It wasn't human. It wasn't animal. It was something else, something ancient, something wrong. The crew was now on the run, their hearts pounding as the structure's walls continued to shift, trapping them inside. The glowing symbols on the walls grew brighter, and the air felt like it was closing in on them. Dr. Mara's mind raced as she tried to process everything that had just occurred. The mechanical voice that had echoed through the chambers. The keepers, who were they? What did they want with them? "We can't outrun this," Thomas said, his voice cracking with panic. "We need to find a way out." Dr. Mara shook her head. "We can't leave. The structure won't let us." She scanned the walls desperately. There had to be a way out. There had to be something, some secret passage hidden among the shifting stones. Suddenly, a low mechanical rumble vibrated through the air, and the ground beneath them shifted. The structure seemed to be reacting to them, almost as if it were alive. "We need to stop it from closing us in," Dr. Mara said. "We need to find the heart of this place." The walls groaned as they continued to move, and the floor trembled beneath their feet. Dr. Mara led the crew down a narrow, winding passageway, hoping it would lead them to something, anything, that could help them escape. The structure was so vast and labyrinthine, it felt like it had no end. "I don't know how much longer we can last down here," Thomas said, his voice hoarse from the panic. Dr. Mara didn't respond. She was too focused, her mind working quickly to piece together the puzzle. The glowing symbols on the walls weren't just decoration, they were part of the mechanism. They had to be. Suddenly, one of the symbols on the wall shifted. A door hidden in the stone slid open. "That's it," Dr. Mara said, her voice filled with a mix of relief and fear. "We need to get through that door now." But as the crew rushed forward, the ground shook again. The door began to close. The crew dove for the opening door just in time, barely squeezing through before it slammed shut behind them. The passage beyond was dark, the only light coming from the eerie glow of the walls. It was a chamber, large, circular, and filled with strange alien-looking machinery. In the center of the room stood a massive stone altar, surrounded by symbols similar to those they had seen earlier. "This is it," Dr. Mara said, her voice barely a whisper. "This is the heart of the structure." Thomas approached the altar cautiously, his eyes wide. "What is this place? It's like some sort of ancient temple." Dr. Mara stepped forward, her gaze fixed on the altar. "This isn't just a temple. It's something far older. It's a prison." As she spoke, the altar began to glow with the same eerie light as the walls. The room vibrated with power, and a low hum filled the air. It was as if the structure was awakening. The hum in the room grew louder, and the air thickened with energy. The crew's eyes widened as the altar began to crack open, revealing what lay inside. It wasn't just an object or artifact, it was a figure, encased in stone, ancient and covered in strange symbols. The figure's eyes were closed, but they glowed with a faint, otherworldly light. Thomas stepped back, horrified. "What is that? What is it?" Dr. Mara stared at the figure, her breath catching in her throat. It's alive." The symbols on the walls began to flicker, and the voice of the keepers echoed through the room once more. "The one who awakens the sleeping one will never leave." figure's eyes snapped open, glowing with a fierce intensity. The room trembled as the figure slowly began to rise from the altar. "No!" Dr. Mara shouted. "We need to get out of here now." The figure moved with unnatural speed, its eyes burning with a malevolent energy. It rose from the altar, towering over the crew. The glowing symbols on the walls intensified, and the mechanical voice of the keepers filled the room, booming in their ears. "You will never leave. You have awakened that which was never meant to be." Dr. Mara and the crew ran for the exit, their hearts pounding with terror. The structure around them began to collapse, the walls shaking violently as if the entire place was falling apart. "We need to get to the sub," Thomas yelled. Dr. Mara nodded, pulling him along as they raced through the crumbling passages. "And yonder!" The ground beneath their feet rumbled as the entire structure seemed to shift. Behind them, the figure followed, its eyes glowing with fury. They had unleashed something ancient, something beyond their understanding. And now, it was hunting them. The crew sprinted through the collapsing labyrinth, the ground beneath their feet shaking violently. The figure, its eyes burning with ancient fury, pursued them relentlessly. Every step it took caused the walls to tremble, as if the very foundation of the structure was responding to its presence. Dr. Mara led the way, her heart racing. "We need to get to the submersible now," Thomas shouted. Dr. Mara pushed forward, not daring to look back. The air around them felt thick with an unnatural pressure, and the sound of the figure's heavy footsteps echoed through the corridors, growing closer. The walls shifted and groaned, narrowing the path ahead as if the structure itself was trying to trap them. "Faster!" Dr. Mara cried, her voice filled with urgency. "We're almost there." But as they rounded a corner, the passage ahead of them collapsed, blocking their path. The only way forward was back into the heart of the structure. The crew came to a halt as the passage collapsed in front of them. Panic set in as they realized they were cornered. The figure's footsteps grew louder, and a low, rumbling growl filled the air. It was getting closer. Dr. Mara's mind raced. They couldn't go back. The submersible was their only chance. "Get to the control room," Dr. Mara ordered, her voice sharp. "I'll try to hold it off." Thomas shook his head. "No, we need to stick together." "I'll be fine," Dr. Mara insisted, her tone final. "Go! Go!" Thomas hesitated, but the urgency in her voice pushed him into action. He and the crew moved quickly, retracing their steps toward the submersible. Meanwhile, Dr. Mara turned to face the oncoming figure, her mind searching for a way to stop it. The glowing symbols on the walls flashed once again, and a thought hit her: could the structure be used against it? "We'll see about that," she muttered to herself. Dr. Mara made a split-second decision. She dashed toward a wall where the glowing symbols seemed to flicker with intensity. The rumbling growl of the figure continued to grow louder, but she wasn't going to let it reach her. Using the knowledge she had gathered from the strange markings, Dr. Mara began to touch the symbols, one by one. Each time her hand made contact, the structure trembled, and the symbols flickered brightly. It was as if the walls were reacting to her touch. "Come on," she whispered, pressing harder against the last symbol. The hum around her intensified, and the ground beneath her feet quaked violently. Then, with a violent jerk, the wall shifted, and a hidden doorway appeared in front of her. "Yes!" Dr. Mara exclaimed, as she stumbled into the room beyond. But the moment she entered, the rumbling voice of the keepers filled the room once more. "You will never escape." Dr. Mara stumbled into the hidden room, which was eerily quiet. The lights from the symbols seemed to flicker out behind her, and the rumbling noise of the figure's approach faded into the distance. She turned to face the room, which seemed to stretch on endlessly, with no visible exits. The air inside was colder, the walls lined with more symbols, but these were different, darker, more ominous. The room seemed to hum with energy, and a large dark stone pedestal stood in the center. The air around it felt thick, heavy with the weight of something ancient. "I have to destroy it," Dr. Mara said to herself, her voice barely audible. The pedestal was the heart of the structure. She moved toward it, reaching out to touch the stone surface. The moment her hand made contact, the entire room trembled, and the hum grew louder. The keeper's voice returned, now amplified and deafening. You cannot destroy what is already part of you. The room exploded with energy as the pedestal reacted to Dr. Mara's touch. The glowing symbols on the walls flared to life, casting strange, shifting shadows throughout the chamber. The ground shook violently, and Dr. Mara staggered back, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The figure was getting closer. She could feel its presence in the room, even though it wasn't visible. The keeper's voice echoed around her, mocking her attempts to escape. You are part of this world now. There is no escape. But Dr. Mara wouldn't give up. She had come too far, and too many lives depended on her. In that moment, she realized the truth. The Bermuda Triangle wasn't just a place. It was a prison for something ancient, something powerful. And it had been waiting for someone to awaken it. With a surge of determination, Dr. Mara reached into the pedestal's energy field and ripped away the glowing symbol at its core. The ground shook violently, and the room began to collapse. She had triggered a chain reaction, one that would either destroy the Bermuda Triangle's grip on them or bury them forever. The structure trembled as Dr. Mara ripped away the core symbol from the pedestal. The energy in the room surged, pulsating violently. The walls began to crack, and the once mighty hum turned into a deafening roar. The Bermuda Triangle had been a prison, but now it was fighting back. Dr. Mara stumbled forward as the room around her fractured and collapsed. She gasped for breath, her body shaking from the intense energy that was crackling through the air. The ground beneath her feet split, sending debris falling into the abyss below. It's collapsing, get out, she shouted. But there was no way out. The only way forward was through the chaos. The structure was crumbling piece by piece as the Bermuda Triangle's hold on them began to break apart. The energy surged again, and the air around them felt thick with the pressure of 1,000 unseen forces. It was as if the very fabric of the triangle was tearing. Thomas and the crew burst into the chamber just as the room began to implode. The walls were disintegrating, and the ceiling above them was crumbling. Thomas grabbed Dr. Mara's arm, pulling her toward the narrow exit that had appeared during the collapse. We have to go now, he yelled. But the doorway was already closing, the walls around it folding in on themselves as if the structure was sealing itself once again. The ground rumbled beneath them, and Dr. Mara knew they didn't have much time left. With every ounce of strength, they pushed toward the exit. The ancient being that had risen from the altar, was nowhere to be seen. The Bermuda Triangle had created its own death trap. Move! Dr. Mara shouted. We can't let it trap us down here. They reached the exit, but it was closing fast. The last thing they saw before the door shut completely was the final rumble of destruction, the power of the triangle's forces being unleashed. The crew emerged from the collapsing structure into the open waters, their bodies battered but alive. The Odyssey was still floating, but the storm had intensified, the sky dark with swirling clouds. The ocean itself seemed to be reacting to the turmoil below, its surface churning violently. We made it, Thomas said, his voice strained, disbelief in his eyes. Dr. Mara looked back at the slowly sinking ruin behind them, her heart heavy with the weight of what they had uncovered. The Bermuda Triangle was not just a place of mystery, it was a prison for something far older and more powerful than any of them had imagined. We can't stop now, she said, her voice quiet but determined. We have to keep going. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. The Odyssey had escaped, but the Triangle's secrets were far from revealed. And whatever force had been awakened was still out there, waiting for them to make their next move. As the Odyssey sailed farther away from the Triangle's epicenter, Dr. Mara stood at the helm, her mind racing with everything they had uncovered. She had thought the Bermuda Triangle was just a mystery waiting to be solved, but now she knew it was something much more dangerous. Thomas joined her, staring out into the stormy horizon. Do you think it's over? He asked quietly. Dr. Mara shook her head, her eyes scanning the dark waters ahead. No, I don't think it will ever be over. Suddenly the ship's radar emitted a series of rapid beeps, followed by a strange, high-pitched whine. Dr. Mara's heart skipped a beat as she leaned forward, her eyes wide with disbelief. "The triangle, it's still calling," she whispered. The radar screen showed an unfamiliar blip, a signal that didn't make sense even in the deepest parts of the ocean. The Bermuda Triangle had been defeated, but its call was far from silenced. The Odyssey continued its journey, but the crew could feel the weight of their discovery, the shadow of the Bermuda Triangle still looming over them. They had escaped, but at what cost? The structure had collapsed, the figure had been unleashed, but it hadn't been destroyed. It had merely retreated into the depths of the ocean, waiting for the next intruder to awaken it. Dr. Mara leaned over the ship's railing, her mind lost in thought. They had uncovered a world beyond their understanding, a world where ancient powers still ruled. "What happens now?" Thomas asked, standing beside her. Dr. Mara turned to him, a weary but resolute look in her eyes. "We go back," she said softly, "and we make sure no one else ever awakens what's down there." The storm clouds above them seemed to part, the sky clearing for the first time since their ordeal began. But Dr. Mara knew that this was only a brief respite. The Bermuda Triangle had shown them its dark heart, and it wasn't done with them yet.